Background.
All right, we're at 11 o'clock, so if we want to go ahead and get started, that'd be great. If our attendees are interested in covering anything, please shoot them into the chat or Q&A box during the content of the presentation, and the conversation, and we can get to them as we go. But I will go ahead and turn it over to Jeff.
Super. Thanks, Caitlin, and welcome to our guests and viewers and all the millions of people on YouTube that will be watching this for months. No pressure, Joe, but we're gonna be famous. We'll be YouTube famous. I'm going to introduce. My name is Jeff Greenfield, and I'm a co-founder along with Michelle Greenfield of Third Sun Solar here in Ohio, and we've been doing solar for 20 years now. We're celebrating our 20-year anniversary. And we thought one thing that we could do on these webinars that would be really useful would be to bring a customer on and just do a Q&A back and forth discussion with the customer. And so I've got as our guest Joe Brem, who is a relatively recent customer. And we'll be doing some question and answer, and then we'll also turn this into a bit of a forum where guests can put questions into the chat function, and Caitlin will kind of curate them and bring that in near the end. I see that we're also live streaming on Facebook now. So again, if there's guests that have questions, they can message that into Caitlin, who's monitoring our Facebook as well as the webinar, and so she'll ask those questions. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Joe, and first say, tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're from.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Joe. I'm originally from Zanesville. So I'm native Ohioan. Bounced around the country a little bit. Came back to Ohio and got my master's in environmental studies from OU. And then I started working with Rural Action, a local nonprofit, shortly after that. And I've been here ever since. So that was like 10, 11 years ago. Yeah, and my girlfriend Sarah and I just bought a house here in Millfield last August, and then kind of started the process of looking into solar shortly thereafter. But I guess the other thing to mention, because it might come up, is that my career is, an environmental educator. So part of that is, discussions about climate change, about energy, things like that. So that's definitely a part of all this for me.
Yeah, that tees right up to the next question is tell us a little bit about this. Thinking about all the other people that are viewing and that will be watching this, everyone's kind of got different motivations for going solar. So tell us a little bit about when you started thinking about going solar, and what are some of your motivations for going solar, Joe?
Well, actually, Jeff, you kind of spoke at a pretty informal lunch when I was in grad school at OU, and shared some of your experience like traveling across Africa. Maybe that was for the Peace Corps. And I think at that time, maybe that might have been the first time I ever heard about Third Sun. And I don't know, just was the origin story, I guess, grabbed me as, it seemed like you were really doing this for the right reasons. And so, I guess I was kind of engaged that way. But also, part of what I sometimes teach about is, like I said, like energy. And locally here, there's a big legacy of pollution from coal mining, before it was regulated, especially. So when we're presenting that to students around here, we make that connection to, between coal mining and energy. And kind of one thing that oftentimes results from that is students have different ideas about how they can produce energy. And so, after showing some slides at that time, I think 88% of Ohio's energy was coming from coal-fired power plants. We just looked at the facts about what kind of pollution that caused and health risks and stuff like that. And they were coming up with these great ideas like making solar-powered buses for their school, and so all these creative ideas. They also wanted to try to milk cows into Sunday Creek to change the pH of the stream. And then recently we've got this project called the Youth Climate Action Team with high school students. And, to make a long story short, part of what we do is like make commitments to have some positive impact on the problem of climate change, and having solar panels at my house was one of those commitments that I kind of made to the students. So I wanted to follow through on that.
Got it. So, it sounds like many of our clients almost all of our clients kind of are motivated by the environmental, clean air and positive environmental impact and carbon footprint. And others are motivated, partly by cost savings and, an alternative investment. And a lot of people, when we ask them, they're saying it's a little bit of both, but more this or more that. So I'm going to guess that you are more of the environmentally driven decision making. Is that same for Sarah as well, or is it a little bit of balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly the ethics is our main motivator, and then I'm kind of like figuring out the financial part of it as we go. Just because, like I said, we had just moved in to our place last summer and didn't really have a good collection of electric bills to study. You know what I mean? So we're kind of guessing a little bit as far as what kind of production we needed versus what we were using and how much we would save. But, essentially it's like we're making a loan payment instead of an electric bill.
Yeah. Sometimes a client once said, Jeff, this is kind of like I used to be a renter. I used to, just get my electricity every month and spend that money, and it goes somewhere, it goes to polluting power plants where it goes. And now I'm paying a mortgage. I'm an owner. I'm a homeowner. So let's shift the conversation a little bit to the process of going solar. A lot of people are curious about this, and I thought you'd be great to just, because it's very fresh. You just pulled the trigger and you just pulled the switch. What were the steps like as far as going solar for you and Sarah?
Well, it was, pretty easy, and people have asked me about this. Basically we just called, I think maybe Caitlin, since we both, know her, and got connected with Jamie. And so Jamie came out, well, first of all, I think looked at, the Google Earth shot of our house to see if we'd be a good candidate for solar, and then came out to check out the place. And from there, she started putting together a proposal, which we got to review. Meanwhile, we did reinforce our roof a little bit, so that was kind of part of our process. Nothing crazy. It probably only costs a couple $100, and we may not have needed to do it, but the house is really old. So it's just got like these old fir rafters that are just nailed together. So just kind of making that more secure. And we had, we went back and forth a couple times on the proposal on how many panels we thought we wanted to try out. And Jamie was great about explaining all that. She, we didn't purchase the panels up front, so we got a loan, and that was, we wouldn't have been able to do this without that. So the fact that Third Son, has that finance partner was really key for us. So we're like learning more about that, about how the rebate works with taxes, and there's a lot of good stuff to study. And once we had everything figured out, a tree fell in our house. So we ended up having the roof replaced, and that delayed the process for probably like 3 months. So yeah, but then, the once we had the proposal finalized, the financing finalized, smooth sailing. Crew came out, and I think, put up the panels and the wiring and everything in just 2.5 days, I think it was. So everyone that we've worked with at Third Sun has just been really great. The crew was like really upbeat, and this was just after the, I think they maybe had to take a little time off because of COVID, and like everything was kind of shut down. So this was their first job back from that, and they were telling us how happy they were to be working, and to be working like right here, kind of close to home with, you know, some familiar type of folks. And just that actually will probably stick out to me just as much as the environmental impacts, is just knowing that we directly, you know, provide at least a couple days work for people in our community, and those dollars are staying, you know, right here. And got connected with those guys. So
Yeah, that's one of the cooler aspects of what we do here. We actually have folks that used to work in the mines. We got a guy who was, you know, an electrician down in the hole, and I shouldn't joke about it, but you know, it's like I'm thinking maybe we should get bumper stickers, you know, trading black lung for sunburn or something like that. But it is part of the cool history of our region with coal, and now we've got well-paid, you know, jobs with benefits, doing good. Tell me a little bit about, I see your system inverter behind you. I don't know if you can adjust the computer and give folks a quick little tour. You probably showed it off to a bunch of friends, family, and neighbors.
yeah, I mean, I've been really geeking out on this since we got it installed. But yeah, so this is showing the total amount of electricity that the panels have produced in the last like 2.5 months, basically. So 1,259 kilowatt hours. And this, you know, these boxes where the magic happens.
Right, that's called the inverter, and it takes that DC power from your roof and turns it into AC, or alternating current, and has all sorts of safety features so that if the utility power goes off, it disconnects so that everyone's safe, and then waits until the power comes back on. You don't have any batteries, so if the power goes out, you're out just like your neighbors.
Yep. Yeah, and we, you know, kind of wanted to dip our toes in the water, if you will, but you know, batteries is definitely something we're interested in, and got to talk with the electrician a lot about that. So, you know, as he was working, it was helpful for us to get a little more info about that, maybe doing that down the road.
Yeah. The lithium-ion battery packs that we're installing can be retrofit, so you're not alone. There's a lot of people that were either installing batteries for systems that we did, you know, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, or they're going solar with their first step of the PV, and then they're planning on adding batteries down the road. So it's an option for folks. What were some of the obstacles or challenges in your solar journey that you had to deal with or navigate? I think you said something about financing, right? You didn't want to write a $50 million check right up front.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have the capital to just, you know, buy the panels with cash, so that was definitely an obstacle that was, like I said, easily overcome with the financing system that you guys have set up. And then just, sorry, there's trucks going by here. Yeah, just the kind of freak things that happen, like the tree falling and things like that. It was, after that happened, it was hard to get a contractor to work on the roof. Everybody was really busy. And, you know, that, I think that is another thing I was thinking about of in terms of our journey, is like, we called Third Sun and someone's there picking up like right away. It's not like you call, you know, some electrician that you know, and wait a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks to hear back. So it was really nice to just be able to get in touch with somebody right away and start moving forward.
Sweet, sweet. And so on the kind of the design process, I think you mentioned that you worked with your solar consultant, Jamie, and that, you looked at different sizes, or there was some back and forth about larger, smaller. Um, and, we always start with the utility bills to see how much energy you're currently using. And then also the satellite pics of, the roof or the ground mount to see how much space we have to work with. Are there big trees around? Um, how did the system kind of size go? Did she start maxing the roof and then shrink it, or start small and grow it? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, she started bigger. And yeah, just thinking about how many panels the roof could fit. But we have a lot more shade on the west side of the house. So all of our panels are actually on the east side of our roof. So we get, a lot of max power from probably like 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. right now. And it still produces for, as long as there is daylight. And one of the trees that fell was to the west, so there's a little more sunlight getting in through that gap. But yeah, we kind of took what meager data we had from our electric bills and thought, like, there's actually not that much in our house that is powered by electricity. So we thought we should probably kind of compromise somewhere in the middle, just so we're not producing more than we're using and getting penalized by EP.
Yeah. Giving away the power if you can't use it in the house, or at least being compensated at a much reduced price. One of the things that we're really careful about balancing the size of the system. And you mentioned being geeking out. Are you checking online at your production and seeing how the system's working?
Yeah, and in fact, I can share the screen for a second if that's okay, to see the monitoring system.
Yeah, let's try that out. We've never done this in our webinars. We'll cross our fingers.
Let me know if you need special permission, Joe.
I think it's working.
We see it.
See that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I try not to check this every 5 minutes, but it's kind of, I really like numbers. So basically, the system has a little Wi-Fi component, and so it's constantly sending information to this monitoring system that we have access to. So you can see, I actually need to I should refresh this, but then I'm afraid it won't work. So we'll just stick with what's up here. Current power, it's like 1.55 kilowatt hours or kilowatts that are being produced. It's been pretty cloudy today, and I think it was like an hour ago that I refreshed this. So only 1.68 kilowatt hours today. But you can see kind of the average. There's been a lot of sunshine in July. So several days over 20 kilowatt hours. And another reason I love looking at this is the CO2 emissions saved. So just over a ton of carbon dioxide prevented from entering the atmosphere as of today. And that's really very important to us.
Yeah, this is great, Joe. When did you go live? Oh, there it is right there. So halfway through May?
Yep, exactly.
That's super. How does the June and July performance compare to the modeling and projection that our systems came up with? Have you done any kind of side by side?
No, actually, I forgot that was included. So I'll have another thing to go back and study.
Yeah.
I'll definitely take a look at that.
So when clients like you kind of go on their solar journey and try to understand, if I invest this much money or sign up for these payments, how much power am I going to get? We are able to, with the system that Jamie and our other solar consultants use, project, pretty accurately, customize for each client how much energy they're going to be able to produce with their rooftop. And it's based on 30 years of climactic data going backwards. So it's going to be different in Akron than it is in Cincinnati. And then also shade. Some houses are shaded differently, and then also orientation. I don't think your panels are pointed exactly perfectly due south. So we kind of build. And so it's a little bit of a compromise. Around what's your orientation?
It's more east, like east southeast probably.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So again, we don't like to put things pointed north, but again, with today's system, that's one of the myth buster pieces, is that people think, oh, if I'm not pointed due south, I can't do it. You know, we've got customers that are pointed northeast or northwest, preferably is southeast, south, or southwest, but we got a lot more
Mhm.
flexibility these days with our modern systems. Some of the other questions people have, let's see, uh, maybe just from you personally, or you and Sarah, what's the best part about having a solar powered home so far?
Well, knowing that we're not contributing to some of the most beautiful mountains on earth being blown up for coal. I mean, that's like one of the first things. And being able to tell the kids I work with or future generations that at least we're trying, to do our best to reduce emissions and take advantage of the solutions that are available to us, like rooftop solar. Um, so that feels great. Um, you know, providing the work for our fellow community members, like I was saying earlier, that was really gratifying, and I think about that a lot. But then also learning, which I already touched on a little bit, but I don't know if I could explain a kilowatt hour to anyone before we got solar panels up. Um, and still sometimes Sarah will be like, what exactly does that mean? And it's like, okay, well, if you have something that's using 1,000 watts and you had it on for an hour, that's basically a kilowatt hour. So just like, being able to understand that better has been really enjoyable.
Yeah, more things to geek out about. I like it. Um, uh, and then let's go ahead and turn to advice to other people that are either considering solar or maybe they're really early in their journey, whether or not to go solar, or maybe they're further along and they're got to pick what kind of solar and what kind of a company to work with. What kind of thoughts would you have on those subjects?
I think definitely studying your electric bills if you have them ahead of time, because that I think could help you be more precise, um, or at least more comfortable in um, assessing the proposals that the consultant provides. You know what I mean? So I felt like we were guessing a little bit. Fortunately, Third Sun is a trustworthy company, and did not like lead us astray or anything. But there's absolutely no harm in calling up, Third Sun and asking for a proposal. That gets you something to you can chew on and take your time learning about. Um, Although it seems like the rebates keep going down a little bit every year, so don't wait too long. Um,
Is
and
that something that you've heard concern about though? I mean, when you said you can feel safe calling Third Sun and they'll give you a proposal, I've heard other people, not wanting, some slimy salesperson in their house, you know, refusing to leave until they sign a proposal. I've heard about that, and it's frustrating that some people, get turned off to the process because of, you know, the fear of that kind of a, experience.
well, yeah, and I hear that. Maybe we have an advantage being in Southeast Ohio, where the communities are kind of tight, and like Jamie, who was our solar consultant, like her kids train jujitsu at the same place I train, and Caitlin has been a friend of ours for a while, so to us it's like inviting friends over to check out the roof instead of slimy salesmen. um, but yeah, and honestly, Jeff, thinking about what motivated you to start the company and your interest in the in the industry, um, that really continues to resonate with me. So yeah, I guess that kind of adds a level of trust or genuineness to the business, in my opinion.
Oh, cool, cool. Well, I, totally appreciate it. I feel pretty humble and almost like I don't know, we're kind of like doing this webinar and paid you lots of money to say nice things about me. Uh, just let me, I appreciate the feedback for our company and our team. Um, More generically, and again, maybe someone's going to be watching this in California where Third Sun Solar doesn't even serve that marketplace.
Mhm.
What kind of advice would you give those folks in, exploring solar?
Yeah, I guess like anything else, just talking to as many people with experience as you can. Um, like I know my parents have considered it. They live in Columbus. But I think whoever came out to check out their place like didn't think the roof could support the panels, which I feel like, you know, maybe they weren't aware of, solutions to that problem. It doesn't seem like it should be a barrier to me. But so yeah, just knowing that you can call different companies, shop around. And yeah, I mean, you could speak to this better than I could, of course, Jeff, but like I'm sure the technology is rapidly advancing. And so that might be something that's a challenge for people to keep up on.
Yeah, maybe I'll flip flop that. Like the question about going solar today versus waiting for someday when there might be, some unknown technology. Um, that's a popular question people have. They don't want to have buyer's remorse, but then on the other hand, they don't want to not have the solar today that they could have. Um, was it the tax credits going down, rapidly that kind of helped you decide to pull the trigger today rather than waiting for something better in the future?
Honestly, I think I have a great sense of urgency about climate change. And so I, our position was not that we were going to wait for the perfect technologic solution. Like we need to use what we have today. And um, again, this is your expertise, but my notion is that if we're investing in the best we have now, that will enable us, to do more research and development in these products so they do keep getting better and better.
Yeah. No, that's accurate. The actual cost of solar has come down, significantly over the last 10 years. And it's been just that the early investors, the subsidy programs have allowed the technology to get better with R&D. And the biggest thing that's helped has been scale. The factory that makes the solar module is more efficient. The companies are larger, more stable. The technology itself is not changing. It's really small incremental improvements. And so I imagine that 3 years from now, we'll probably be offering the same exact solar modules that are maybe 2-3% more watts per square foot. Um,
Mhm.
and the price might be a little bit better, but I don't expect any big breakthrough technologies. And this is something I'm up to my eyeballs in every day. It's my life, my mission. But I think
Yeah,
one of that the subsidy, the federal tax credit, is on its downward slope, and so that gives a lot of people kind of comfort, saying, okay, maybe there'll be something that's 5% better economic value a year from now, but with the tax credit going down, it'll go down faster than that 5%. So I'm better off doing it now. And then almost everybody's like you, Joe. They're like, I want this now. I want to show everyone we can do this. We don't have to wait. Solar is not a tomorrow or a someday technology. Solar is a today technology. We're gonna make bumper stickers that say that.
it's good. It's a good slogan. Yeah, I mean, we have a good friend who's in Wood County, Ohio, and he put up solar panels on his barn like in the 70s, I think. And it's like you still recognize it as a solar panel, so I'm sure there will be improvements and advances, but I feel like we've had long enough with this technology to know that basically how well it's working.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, this has been great. I want to try to keep it into like a bite-sized segment, although we could probably do like a 2-hour deep dive if you wanted, especially with an environmental educator. What advice would you have? Like if you're, next Thanksgiving, knock on wood, we're post-COVID, we can gather together, be in the same room. When you're talking about your experience with, your relatives, friends and family, what advice would you give?
I would advise them to buy solar panels and get them up on their house. I mean, people buy new TVs like it's nothing, you know, but are we really thinking deeply about where we're getting our food, where we're getting our energy or water? Those, we should all be thinking a lot about that, especially, it's of this pandemic. It's like, I think the need for self-reliance is really accentuated. And, I know we're tied into the grid here, so technically we're maybe not producing exactly our own energy, but, I can see where it's coming from. It's our rooftop. We've, kind of taken the same approach with food. I'll just give a quick glimpse of the garden out here.
All right, look at that. Your deer have not eaten your sunflowers the way they're
Yeah, exactly. So, just taking more time to think about producing our own energy and food, and kind of stepping away from or not relying on the bigger systems that can be very unequal and sometimes unjust or really, really damaging to things that Sarah and I really care about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you didn't use the word resilience, but that word is coming up so many different ways and so many different contexts, and even without batteries, with more and more people, distributed throughout the grid, decentralized power, that makes the grid more resilient. If you want to geek out, you can get on the internet and look about ohmic wire losses, but basically voltage drop. Those big, huge, old centralized power plants, almost half of the energy is lost in transmission by the time it gets to the end users. And in the modern, yeah, it's amazing how much, they make 1,000 kilowatts and they only get money for 500 kilowatts. It's a very inefficient system to send out that power. And that was the best they had 100 plus years ago. Today, we are building a distributed, interdependent system where you are part of the grid, and even transport, you're likely to be 5 years from now having an EV that's part of the grid as well. So I love this metaphor. If we had a time travel machine, right, and we could bring back Westinghouse or Edison, and we could also bring back Alexander Graham Bell or Marconi. So we bring back Marconi and Graham Bell, and we walk them around our world, and we show them this. They'd be dumbfounded. They'd be like, "What kind of magic is this?" They would not know about satellites. They'd not know about cell towers. They'd not know about data packets and the world's computer in my pocket. Huge, huge, huge progress in telecom and IT. On the other hand, if we brought back Westinghouse and Edison and showed them the power lines come to your house, showed them the turbines at a combined cycle, gas-fired power plant, they'd be like, yep, that's my technology. Well, I totally understand the transformer, the switch, the regulators, the distributors. So my point is that we have deregulated IT and telecom. We smashed Ma Bell, and now we have competitors, and we've got incredible innovation. We've leapt forwards, hugely. And for better or for worse, I'm going to think for worse, we have let a protected monopoly kind of hold on to the status quo and suppress innovation and say, no, burning coal the way we have for 100 plus years is just fine. We're going to continue to do this. And they've been fighting against innovation and fighting against people like you taking your power back. And with headlines these days about House Bill 6 and the $60 million of bribes.
Yeah.
Finding this is front and center that they've been actively trying to keep us from having our solar revolution. And I want to thank you and Sarah and all of our other customers and anybody that's gone solar already for sticking it to the utility and taking your power back and taking it into your own hands and owning your own power. It's phenomenal. It's a great feeling. So thank you,
It
Joe.
is.
All right, Caitlin, we promised that we'd have a chance for questions, and then what do? Is I go on and talk and talk and talk. Are there any things that popped in from the viewers?
Yeah, we do have one question so far. If anyone else does have other questions, feel free to use the chat features, or if you're with us on Facebook, use the Facebook comment feature, and we can get to them. This one of our friends on Facebook asks, can you speak more about the environmental impact of resources used in obtaining and manufacturing solar cells and panels? We are now on the solar journey, and a friend just challenged us with that question. I would like to learn more.
I'm glad that question's come up. I've got all sorts of answers, but I'm going to ask Joe, as an environmentalist, did you weigh the pros and cons of going solar and look at the embodied energy or the resource,
Well,
supply chain?
I mean, I definitely want to hear what you have to say, because I also still have some of those questions, but like I was saying earlier, I think we made the decision to do it because, like, I'm not just going to sit around and wait until all these processes are exactly figured out to proceed with a solution to this problem, and do the best we can now. So
Yeah,
I'd love to hear more about the resources, how they're collected and hopefully recycled.
yeah. So I guess there's two big subjects that I'll say. So the first is what I'll call embodied energy. Pretty huge, Do I buy a new fridge now that's more efficient, or do I get a couple more years out of the fridge that I already have, and all the resources that went into the material to build and transport that fridge? So people in the environmental world do an embodied energy analysis on all these different decisions we have. And so the question of how many years will the solar module have to be generating energy in order to offset or equal the energy that went into mining the raw materials, transporting, manufacturing, etc., is pretty critical. And people are blown away that the answer is about 2 years. It's a little faster if you're in a sunnier area. It's a little slower if you're up in Alaska. But right now here in Ohio, our clients like you, Joe, that put out solar modules, the embodied energy of manufacturing all the material and then the transportation, that inverter, came from Malaysia, and it came through, on a ship, and it came to our warehouse, and we drove it up and hung it on your wall. All that energy has to be accounted for as well. If you do a third party, scientific study, it's about 2 years. And so these modules have a plus or minus 35-year design life. Some modules might last longer than that. We really don't know. They have about a 25-year warranty. So they clearly are going to net out more energy than went into production. Now that begs the question then is what kind of information is out there on the interwebs? And there's a lot of false information, anti-solar, anti-clean energy, anti-EV about don't do this, it's terrible, you'll be making the world a worse place. And so people have to vet where that information comes from. Is it a meme put out by a utility-backed fossil fuels dark money disinformation campaign, or is it science? And if you dig into the science, we know the truth is that these systems pay for themselves with energy, many times over. Second part of this is the supply chain and toxics. So inside the inverter, inside your telephone, inside your television and computer, there's heavy metals, there's rare earth minerals, there's titanium, mined and all over the world, copper, all the electric wires in our house, all the electric wires coming from the utility grid have copper. Clearly, we all have an impact every time we use anything manufactured. So the solar industry is not perfect and not magical. We care about this and we're watching it. And I think that we have, supply chain issues that just like anything else we use, just like the car you drive. So the way I approach it is, what's the current state? The current state is we get our electricity from a central coal-fired power plant. And it does just as much, if not more, I believe more, environmental damage than switching over to the sun. So I think that if you're really an environmental purist, you should look at the facts, do the research, and come to your own conclusion. And most people I've concluded, and I consider myself an environmental, I compromise. I drive a car, I use a cell phone, but I care a lot about the environment. So that's part of it. The other disinformation that's out there is on the solar modules. People will say that they use heavy metals. Well, that's a thin film module. That's different from what we use. So some thin film modules use cadmium and telluride. There's no cadmium, no telluride in the modules that we are installing these days. So we go on and on and on about this. Good stuff.
Great, thanks, Joe. So another question that we got, is it very effective to use mono panels in a small system of about 5 panels?
So the question is about the technology of what kind of modules people use. And maybe about 5 years ago and earlier, there's lots of information about, should I use monocrystalline or polycrystalline or multicrystalline or thin film? And there are cost benefit analyses, and people really got into the weeds about it. These days, it's more about how much energy you're going to get per dollar spent is most clients' first question. And then if some clients have a limited roof and their goal is to offset 100% of their utility bill or the maximum availability of their carbon offset, they might look at how much energy per square foot. So energy per dollar spent or energy per square foot are the two metrics. And in both cases, we'll get different answers. If it's energy per dollar spent, oftentimes it's a polycrystalline. And then if it's energy per square foot, it's more often monocrystalline. And then sometimes it's aesthetics. I want a uniform all black module. And if that's the case, it's oftentimes a monocrystalline. And then that answer doesn't change if it's 5 modules or 50 modules. It's still we've got different technologies that we can use depending on what the client, their end goals are.
The learning never stops. There's a lot out there. So Joe, at any point, we've got someone asking about ground mount versus roof mount. At any point, did you consider doing a ground mount? I don't know how much land you have out there.
Yeah, it's like an 1/8 of an acre, so it's not too much, and there's trees in the backyard, so I don't think we really ever seriously considered that. I did ask Jamie about, what if we had a ground mount, like right off the road, and there's just like a little pull off where we park our cars. I was thinking maybe, what if we put the panels up and park the cars under, but it just didn't really seem to make sense. But I know somebody who does have them, and they're probably like 200 feet away from the house to get at the best spot, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's the job of the solar consultant when they're looking at the satellite view. Oftentimes they'll say, okay, the roof is all broken up with dormers and vent stacks and stuff, or it's really shaded. We almost always look at the roof first. But I think if we did a look back, we'd find that about 15% of our customers, we like to call them, people in our solar family. About 15% of the folks in the Third Sun tribe have ground mounts. And it might be the roof age. We don't want to put solar on a roof that's going to be, needing to be re-roofed in, plus or minus 15 years, or the orientation or size, or, the shading of the roof. Roof is usually less expensive. And in your case, Joe, I think the roof, was easy because, the yard is there and there's not much, you don't have, acres and acres of open space. So sometimes, same thing in Clintonville or up in Columbus, people might not have, a lot of ground mount area. So it's case by case, it's customized. A lot of flexibility there.
Great. So posing this question to both of you as your differing roles in the environmental sphere, what do you know about electric cars? Chevy Volt, or wait for new technology? I don't know. Where are you with that? Question for both of you.
I'll answer quickly first. Yeah, I think long term, that's kind of a dream is, to have an electric car. So we're not burning coal for electricity, and eventually not burning gas for, in our cars. I think we would have to add on to our current system, to be able to charge the car up, but I really don't know that much about it. But, a friend has had a Chevy Volt for a long time, and he really liked that. And yeah, it's like he said, he has to go to the gas station once a year just to change out like the 1 gallon or something that has to remain in the old model or something. But yeah, that sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, I drove a Chevy Volt for 3 years, and now I drive a Ford Fusion plug-in hybrid. So the technology is coming along so fast, and it's being more and more accessible. I mean, what's that little one from Chevy? I think it's the Bolt. It's all electric, and then Nissan Leaf, you see them all over town. I wish I could afford a Tesla. I just can't, justify dropping that big of a check on such a cool car. I want to send my money to some nonprofits and do some traveling with my, we all make our choices about how to spend money. But I think 5 years from now, people will be surprised if you're not driving electric. I think it's moving so quickly, and all the majors are following what Tesla was an early leader on. We're going to have electric trucks. We're going to have electric cars. There'll be, charging stations everywhere. It'll be boring. So, the question is, do you want it now? Are you willing to pay a little bit of a premium? Or do you want to wait for the technology to be more, scaled and have the cost come down? It's kind of an individual decision.
Great. We had an attendee, David. He adds to the conversation. He has a Prius Prime, and the electric experience is to die for, he says. Power use is very modest on the electric bill, especially with a 220 power source. Great. Let's see here. The questions slowed down a bit. I think we have some that we did not get to yet. I guess the last thing I'm seeing that's kind of a theme is Powerwall batteries. Can you install them once you've already installed? Joe mentioned he's maybe thinking about it, something a little bit later down the road, and how a little brief overview of how they work when the power goes off.
Yeah, well, I'm going to press this button here. See my backdrop? It's just a plain wall, or is it? So this is my Powerwall in my garage, and I am so stoked to have it. I've built my house off grid 25 years ago, and had lead acid batteries. The old, talking about technology, lead acid batteries are 100-year-old, Edison era technology. Very simple stuff, very proven, but they don't last very long, and there's maintenance involved. I had to add distilled water, and my batteries lasted maybe 5 years for my first set, about 7 years for my next set, and then I killed another set. And maintaining those batteries was and I'm in the business, I'm a techie, and I still couldn't do it well. So the biggest reason why people are switching over to batteries so quickly is that lithium ion and Tesla's made it easy, and there's no maintenance. I don't have to think about them or do anything or water them or check them. I don't have to especially modify my energy use. They work with the utility grid and with the solar. So that's really opened it up. And we are selling a lot of batteries now, and mostly because it's easy. So Joe and all the other folks that have gone solar with the inverter that he's got, that's compatible with this battery. This battery can be added to older inverters. It can be added, put in, it's less expensive if we do it all at once, because then we only show up once, we're only on site once, we're only doing the engineering and design once, we pull a permit once. So it's less expensive to wrap it all in one install. But many people do say, you know what, I want to plan for it, and then you all come in, maybe 2 years from now, maybe a year from now. They do need to be installed inside, at least in our Ohio winters. Installing it outside, we'll put it outside of the operating temperature. So there's some misinformation out there. They market and they say it can be installed outside. Well, yeah, in California it can be, but here in Ohio, if you want to use it in the winter, you want to have it in conditioned space. So that's one factor, is where is it going to live? It's not that big. This is kind of a floor shot that makes it look bigger, but we've got a lot of good resources in our YouTube channel and through our website on batteries and on user experience with batteries. Lots of features about it. We can go on and on and on about it, but that's the high level view. Do you have a basement, Joe?
Yes, we do.
Sounds like that's where we'll hang your unit, and we might put in one for you. Most often we use 3, 4, 2. So they're modules. So most people use about 2 or 3 of these things, and then you can do it over time. You can start with 2, and then say, you know what, I've had longer power outages. I want to be able to ride through a 2-week winter ice storm. Then say, okay, we'll add more. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
Sounds great.
And we also have the financing. Joe, mentioned the financing before. It was zero down financing. We realized that if we're going to have our solar revolution and really bring solar out to the masses, it can't be for folks that have the ability to write a $28,000 check or write a $50,000 check. So we've joined with a credit union and with a group called Mosaic that can do easy financing that doesn't tap into your home equity. You might have a mortgage on your house and you might not have any equity in your house. You can't get a second mortgage or anything like that. Mosaic and the credit union will use the value of the solar equipment as the collateral. So you're not getting a second mortgage. You're simply you're borrowing against the value of the solar system. And we'll do, how many years did you finance for, Joe, if you don't mind?
No, I think 15, but we're trying to pay it off in 10. I think that's
great. So zero down. Sometimes customers say, well, it sounds too good to be true, or sounds kind of weird, but it really is in our mission to make solar accessible to everybody. or as many people as possible. We've got the zero down partnerships, and the loans are set up so that also when you get your tax credit back, you go solar this year, you don't get the tax credit impact until down the road. It's set up so that you make that big lump sum payment and your payments stay the same. There's a lot to it, but it makes it easier for folks to go solar. You do have to have decent credit. Obviously, if you maxed out all your credit cards and are late on payments and just have a bad credit score for whatever reason, that might not let you access this credit opportunity. But it's real popular with people that want to go solar and have a $200 a month payment or a $300 a month payment instead of stroke a big check.
Great, thank you both so much. We are coming up on the top of the hour. We've gotten to most of the questions that we have. If there are any remaining questions, I would encourage you to reach out. You can shoot an email to info@thirdsunsolar.com, send us a message on our Facebook page, write us a comment on YouTube, and we can get to those kind of questions. Also, our YouTube is a really great resource. A lot of the questions folks are asking, we have really deep dives on there. So thanks so much, Joe, for being a solar champion. It's really been great to watch you go through this process.
Thank you very much for getting us in the door, Caitlin. And very much to both of you for all that you do.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Sarah. And thanks to all the viewers out there asking good questions. Spread the word. Solar is not a tomorrow technology. Solar is here today in Ohio, and Joe's an example of one of the 1,000+ clients that we have putting solar to work. It's real. It's here. Take your power back. It's awesome.
Great. Thanks, everyone.